Welcome to Inform TV. I'm Alan Repke, Alexandria, Minnesota. We want to once again welcome the new listeners on the Garfield Tower here west of Alexandria, and we want to give all our listeners around the state as we grow into more of a station rather than just my commentary programs, and give all outstate people in Minnesota a real informed look at what's going on behind the scenes. Today, with the drought going on, we're going to talk from on a rural resident basis as far as what's going on behind the scenes as far as this crop faces challenge, as the corn and bean price keeps going up and the supply keeps coming down. I've invited Joel here from Country Hedging, part of CHS in the Twin Cities that's involved in petroleum, fertilizer, grain movement. Joel, welcome to Inform TV and Outstate Minnesota.
Oh, thank you, Alan. I'm happy to be here.
Can you give us a little introduction on yourself, your company, a little background, and what you guys at Country Hedging do and your relationship to the fertilizer outlets, the grain outlets, the petroleum outlets? Cenex is probably one that all the people in outstate Minnesota quickly recognize, and give us a little background.
Okay. Again, my name is Joel Fitch. I work for Country Hedging. We're a wholly owned subsidiary of CHS. The purpose of our company is to provide advice to farmers and grain elevators, as well as energy customers and fertilizer customers, about what the pricing trends are and to help them manage their risk of their businesses. And Country Hedging is a wholly owned subsidiary of CHS, and as you said, the part of CHS that the customer or that the farmer might be most aware of is the Cenex brand, which is where we do all of our gasoline sales here in the rural areas.
So on a typical day here in Minnesota, obviously, we have a Cenex fuel outlet here. You go south. Give us an example. You were just up in the Crookston area. What were you doing up there?
In Crookston, I was actually meeting with an elevator client there, the CHS affiliate, Mid-Valley Grain. And I was actually just there for a customer appreciation day.
Okay.
So getting a chance to meet some of the board of directors.
And did you have some farmer clients as well you were talking to there, or was it?
Most of my client base is commercial elevators. I do have some individual farmers that I talk to, but most of them aren't in the region.
So you're up to your neck, as they say, with trying to manage this price rise. People
Certainly.
who sold it maybe too early on a hedge and now are putting big money into a margin account. And some of your clients, I'm sure, got a smile on their face this big because this market is going up every day.
Well, I mean, for the clients that have good crops, they are generally very happy because prices have been rallying and it's good for their bottom line.
When you headed up to Crookston, northwestern Minnesota, where some of our signal is going, what did you see from Minneapolis? I presume you came up 94 to 29, or did you stay on the Minnesota side going up there?
When I came up 94. And went all the way up to 9 and turned north to Crookston.
Okay.
And basically what I saw south of 10 was more variability in the crop of corn than I thought I was going to see. You see the dry spots, areas where the corn is starting to fire at the lower leaves, and generally Minnesota and North Dakota have been the best crop ratings within the United States, and I was frankly surprised by the variability. Once you turned north of 10, things generally looked much better.
What's the talk in the valley itself? Obviously, Red River Valley, we've got some listeners in that area. We're all familiar with the sugar beet grain crop. What was their reaction? They have a good beet crop coming, a good edible bean crop coming, wheat, or what? Or didn't they get into that?
I guess I don't touch the edible beans very much because it's not a traded commodity.
Sure.
But in terms of the broad spectrum of crops that we would touch, which would be corn and soybeans, and then the both classes of wheat, I think that they all could pretty much use a rain for their soybean and corn crops. At this point, they don't seem like they're certainly not a disaster.
What's the spring wheat crop look like up that way? Is it?
So we're already starting to enter harvest in some locations, and I was hearing yields that varied between 30 and 90 bushels. which is quite a huge variety. And so I think that reflects, not only the heat, but the variability in where the rainfall happens.
What is your experience with southern Minnesota? Our signal goes down to Rochester, to Austin, Albert Lee, Mankato, Wilmer, Marshall, and others down that way. What kind of crop in the southern corn belt, corn, soybean country, what are you hearing or seeing there?
Sure. Before this trip, I would have said kind of the same thing, that I would have expected that the crops were generally in good shape, and that they could use a rain to sort of carry them along, and hopefully we would catch more rains into August. But having seen what I saw along 94, I'm fairly certain that south of 94 into that 90 sort of territory in very southern Minnesota, that there's going to be more variability and spots where the corn is tough. The beans at this point, I would say, still have some opportunities. Beans can certainly withstand a drought for longer periods of time, and if we can catch some rains here in the next number of weeks, we can add a.
Now, in your organization, Country Hedging, you guys are heavily involved here. Your main office is in the Twin Cities, but you also have an office in Indianapolis as well as Kansas City. And people, you can actually go to www.countryhedging.com and see some of the commentary. We hope you'll give a good plug to your local Cynic station, your local fertilizer and elevator company, because I want to put, as we get Mark Anthony back on news, and when professionals like Joel and Country Hedging and Cenex, whether it's fuel or fertilizer or the CHS organization, if they have something, we want to see that you rural residents are truly informed, and that's why I've invited him here today. I love some of their short clips that we'll probably have a business section at the end of the news that we think you'll all be in, whether it involves your 401k plan or just knowing what's going on in outstate Minnesota and rural areas. Obviously, then, let's give a little rundown on what you're hearing. Your Indianapolis office, is that in the core of the drought? Everybody's hearing it on the news. The drought is affecting the price of corn, soybeans dramatically. Everything's on the rise. Is that Indianapolis area, Indianapolis, Indiana, is that the center of the drought, or what are you hearing in your group?
Well, up until a few weeks ago, you would have said that the center of the drought was really sort of the eastern half of Illinois all the way through Indiana, and that was the eastern corn belt was where the heart of the drought was. And I think over the last couple of weeks, you've seen crop conditions fall in Iowa and in South Dakota and Nebraska that indicate that the dryness that we've been experiencing has really been spreading into the western part of the corn belt as well. Still, the toughest conditions are going to be in the eastern corn belt, and Indiana is particularly hard hit.
What are you hearing to the point where there was like 95, 96 million acres of corn planted? Obviously, there's about 6 million acres go traditionally for silage each year, and then the rest tends to be harvested for grain, and there's always been some abandonment. On a normal year, there's always some sand spots or there's some drowned out spots. Are you seeing to the point where that harvested acres could be dramatically reduced, you think, or not?
Well, in years like this, in the past, you've seen harvested acres be a smaller percentage of the total crop than a normal year. And so that's what our expectation is again. And I've seen some estimates that push that number as low as 85 million for the actual harvested acreage. So that would be quite a reduction from what a normal year would bring you.
What does Country Hedging, where do you see this crop size right now? The government gave us 140 bushel per acre crop here with the crop report in July, I believe. Where do you guys, when you're advising elevators and farmers out there, as well as I presume you do some end user product, whether it's an ethanol plant or whatever, what on a daily basis, are you still at that 140? Or are you bringing it down a bushel a day or a bushel a week, or how is it?
Yeah, it's coming down as the weather continues to be troubling, right? That yield estimate's going to come down. And I think right now the market is probably trying to price something around 130 to 135 for a national corn yield. So that's a significant, massive change from the 166 that the USDA gave us earlier this season.
What from a standpoint then, do you have any end users? On one of my previous program, I showed a Doritos bag. In fact, it's laying on the floor. I probably should have picked it up. But we're even at $9 corn, Joel. That 17-ounce family-size bag of Doritos or ranch chips. There's only 1 pound of corn, and I think, if I remember right, $9 corn, there's 16 cents in that bag. Are you seeing, whether it's a hog producer or an ethanol plant, or some of them shutting down or making some major changes to their output? What do you hear that way?
Well, we've certainly seen slowdowns from the ethanol plants. There have been plants that have decided to shut down. There's still a lot of uncertainty about whether they will continue to run for the rest of the summer, or whether there will be shutdowns that lead into the new crop time frame when the new corn is harvested. From the other side, one of the other groups that's really massively impacted here is the livestock industry. And there's just not much they can do about it without having put on coverage before. What we're seeing is that there's going to be liquidation from cattle herds because they can't. Basically, the economics don't work to feed the animals to a normal weight.
What about the Genios and some of the large producers? I haven't got into it lately, but nationwide, I think 90% of our hog hog industry today is influenced by what we call hog coordinators that are, in other words, tied to meat people quite substantially. Were they hedged ahead or still going, or you see actual egg, turkey, meat, beef, pork supply going down? Is that kind of what you're seeing?
Well, I guess I don't know exactly what all of those different businesses had chosen to do, but I think generally there is a lack of, they didn't get enough coverage on for the possibility that prices went higher as they have this fall, or this summer into this fall. And so they're going to struggle for profitability.
I encourage people always go to informtv.com, because that's kind of my video bank. And one of the recent programs that we did in July here, examining the agribusiness giants, where I showed you a chart and where they had opportunities. In fact, Joel and I are soon going to be talking about this. And I told y'all not to get him into trouble with any of his bosses. One of the things that are interesting from a standpoint over history, people will say, well, this guy is a true expert. Joel is the true expert. Alan is the true expert. But when it comes to marketplace, the history shows nobody is a true expert when it comes to commodities, and we're involved with weather events, unforeseen demands such as ethanol, and just a number of things. And I'll give him a little information before his time, of course. Back when I was farming country hedging, one of when corn prices went up in 95, 96, there was a hedge to arrive situation. There was a ton of money involved there. Advice from experts of all types. Lost people a ton of money, and they were supposed to be the best ones at the time. We go forward to CHS, and I'm not doing anything that they're not aware of in the newspapers, the Star Tribune, the Fargo Forum, the St. Paul paper. When CHS was involved in the ethanol business, they didn't hedge their corn correctly and ended up selling out to another group. And I think Joel and our little conversation had that outfit bellied up. Valero, the oil company, ended up with some of them. I think some of the ethanol plants here in Minnesota that were involved in subsidies here, Winthrop, my old friend Ben Brown down there, picked up that with a group of co-ops here. We've had the challenge with the one of our Fergus Falls listeners. You're aware of that, getting in the market at the wrong time and not being hedged or not having your finished product locked in. So I have great empathy, if that's the right word. I probably don't pronounce it right. This guy's got a tough job right now, people. The market's been going straight up, but we had a little piece from DTN that I was showing him here. This was on about the 20th of June, and the headlines for clients that get DTN, and a lot of the local elevators publish their information. This was on June 20th. It said, "Farmers should consider emptying their bins at current prices," and they were talking about the corn market. Now we'll get Joel and the fine people at Country Hedging and an opportunity. We'll talk about this price shift and where we're at. Here's what I was talking about, folks, and hopefully you can see this. This is the September corn contract. It was down in mid-June to about $5 a bushel. In other words, the end users that Joel deals with on a daily basis, and I've talked about here, they had an opportunity, whether it was September corn or December corn, to lock in a number of quarters, maybe even a whole year's supply if they wanted to speculate that was the best time. But now, folks, look what's happened. This where my finger is, if you can see it, is below $5.20 a bushel, and today it's at $8.21 a bushel. A $3 bushel move, and back in 95, 96, people were praying to get $3 corn, and even coming into the 2000s, we had $2 corn, people. And so here's the challenge. So we'll let Joel and the fine people at CHS and Country Hedging. Joel, this is what, if you were a buyer of futures or still had your bins full and didn't listen to the DTN advice, $3 a bushel, mind-bogglingly changed with 200 bushel of corn and 1,000 acres of corn. Just think of that.
It's a massive change in profitability and outlook for the farm community.
What we always ask, and we want people to understand the complexity of this market and the challenge that people like Country Hedging face in this environment. How many of your end users were locking in? What was the position of Country Hedging, or what kind of feedback were you getting farmers? Now, according to DTN, it sounded like there was still a lot of farmers very bullish on corn because they knew there wasn't much of a supply there, and we didn't in June know what the crop size was going to be, and that's a traditional reaction by farmers. But most years we get rain, and they get a lot of egg in their face. I've had a lot of egg in my face. Joel, what has happened here from 520 to 820? Give us a little rundown of what you've been facing, or your cohorts at Country Hedging.
At the very beginning of June, right, we were still under the impression that 96 million acres of corn was going to lead to a very big crop. It was planted early. That tends to help. And so I think that a lot of end users did not give themselves any coverage because they expected prices to be lower in the fall.
And what were they targeting? I had read different places that end users were looking at a 450 rather than, was that a target date? What target were these end users not locking this in? Was there any?
I don't think that it's ever a situation where an end user would say, there's one price that I'm going to try and pay for my entire needs for the year. But what typically happens is they try to layer into lower prices and to adjust their buying strategy depending upon what the market does.
In this window, or the window out here, back in February, the corn price was in that, at least the December contract, 568, something like this. So it was higher if we could extend this chart out, but you can see here it's in that 540 range. Was there a lot of corn either sold by producers or bought in that position? The ethanol plants, what percentage you think is sold or not sold? Are farmers happy that they haven't sold? Obviously they should be, but give us an idea on that.
I think in this previous time period where prices were $6 and higher for the December 12 contract, there was some aggressive marketers who went out and contracted some bushels to get that sold. After we kind of broke below $6, it was very slow movement from the farm community, and not a whole lot of interest in selling corn in the future when you could get a higher price today.
Do you have a lot of farm clients that are still sitting on corn? Or in fact, this letter from DTN said that the farmers were targeting 650 futures, which would be right in the middle. Mm-hmm. Now they got 820. Have most farmers now totally emptied out the clients you guys work with in Minnesota, outstate Minnesota here?
I think we're still in that process.
Okay.
The farmer tends not to clean out his bins until the very last moment often. I mean, at this point, the prices are great, so it's less of a concern. He's just continuing to wait because he hasn't had the prices have continued to rally for him.
And that's old crop as well as new crop.
So I would say on old crop we were already at pretty small pipelines because of a tight crop last year. Sure. As well. And so the amount of crop that's out there that remains to be sold is probably very small. The USDA had been telling us that we've been expected to carry out about 900 million bushels. So that gives you an idea of where they think we would have been. On the price rally here, as we started to break above $6 and especially above $6.50, there was a much more aggressive move from the farm community to start getting new crop corn as well as soybeans sold on the rally, and that pretty much held steady up through the sevens, and the farmers been working to get more sold.
Were the end users there aggressive at that point in time, or the old crop there wasn't a lot to buy, but they can always lock in futures at that point. Mm-hmm. When this thing started with a very significant jump from 520 to 650 range here in the middle of this, were they aggressive, or did they say, well, this thing is a short run, we're going to get that rain?
Yeah.
What are you hearing that way?
I think that tends to be the way they react to that. Again, aggressive end users probably put on some options coverage to try and take advantage of higher prices or protect themselves if prices went higher. But in terms of just buying outright lots of new crop, I don't think that they put on a whole lot of coverage, and now are sort of regretting that decision.
From a standpoint then for our listeners to the north or have farmland in Red River Valley, this wheat crop or the wheat crop that was harvested around here, were most producers selling it off the combine, so to speak? And is that their plan when you talk to an elevator at Crookston? What do they sense? Or do they have a bunch booked? Or are they just think that farmer, when he gets out in that field between now and with this warm weather, probably the middle of August, they're probably wrapped up with harvest up there?
I think harvest is going to be done by in the next 2 weeks.
Yes.
Really.
And did you find the tendency with talking with people in the Red River Valley, they're going to sell this crop off the combine?
We've seen aggressive selling here over the last 3 weeks. Again, with the corn rally, wheat has rallied as well.
Now the interesting thing, while I'm bringing it up to show you the complexities, the challenges those elevator managers, those farmers, and guys like Joel especially face, I think if we had a wheat chart here, the spring wheat is about $10 a bushel today, isn't it?
It was over 10 yesterday.
Okay, over 10. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you roll back to 2008, what did spring wheat futures in Minneapolis go to?
Sure, the futures made it up to $25.
$25, people. And that was based on some option strategy and whatever. People were caught with their pants down, as they say. So it'll be interesting to see what those producers with a good crop, obviously off the combine at $10, are going to make some pretty good money.
Yes, they will definitely be happy with their bank accounts after that.
And then we'll try to go here quickly to the soybean chart and show you what's happening there today. Soybeans have been strong worldwide. Brazil, Argentina, right, didn't get as big a crop as they had been.
Yeah, they both had poorer crops.
And so soybeans have been extremely strong. Now today we're talking that $17, $18. I think they had $18 yesterday on one contract, didn't they?
That's correct, yeah.
And so we also there have a terrific move. When it comes to soybeans, Scenic or the CHS probably's got some processing plants. You guys get involved in advising them, or their rail loading, or their export facilities, or do they take care of that, the big guys?
The processing plants take care of themselves. There'd be kind of a conflict of interest from my perspective, as I represent and know what elevators have on hand in trying to also advise the end user. But what we will see is, because of the smaller South American crops, is meal demand. And so those processors are going to have to be somewhat aggressive, because you're going to have to feed animals something, and you're not going to have meal out of Argentina, and you're also not going to have probably as many DDGs as the ethanol industry's profitability goes down.
Which tends to be a high protein replacement for soybeans meal, or a competitor there. The other thing on the soybean side, the ending stocks are actually even tighter than corn. And traditionally, I told in one of our last programs to our audience here, a couple things before I lose my train of thought and we run out of time. Joel, we really appreciate you being here to keep people informed in outstate Minnesota. Obviously, one of the things that happened in 2008 when this market took off was the incredible cost of keeping enough money in that margin account for an elevator or a ethanol plant, or even a farmer that thought he should book it at a certain price and the market went against him. Is that same thing happening? Is the local banks here in Wilmer, Marshall, outstate Minnesota, are they struggling again with their clients, or did you guys figure out an option strategy where you bought some calls out of the market and now they're free, they're just watching it go up? What's happening? Well, what did they learn from 2008? Anything? Or are they still writing huge checks for
for anybody
accounts?
Who has inventory hedged, short, or that has hedges on the books, right? They're writing big margin checks.
$1, $2 a bushel, $3 a bushel?
Certainly.
Both in corn and soybeans.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't think that this year is quite the same as 2008. I don't think that the amount of inventory on the books at the elevators or for the end users is nearly the same size. I think it's smaller this year, and so the rally probably is impacting their operations and their working capital a lot less. So I haven't heard a whole lot of stress from the banking industry or from customers saying we're running out of working capital.
Okay.
But we've obviously continued to rally, and the more the farmer sells to them, that takes up every little increment of working capital, and things could get tight.
So the board members in these communities that we serve here in Inform TV, they're all a little nervous right now with some pretty big expanded.
I would guess they've borrowed extra money from the banks.
That would be my guess, and that's the purpose of our program today, for you to understand the complexity of many things, where some of the end users locked in prices, use Joel's advice or DTN, and they got a smile a mile wide. But others that thought we were at high prices, whether when beans went to 14, which is historically a heck of a price, and they're still going. And one of the things interesting that when I look at the perspective of Joel's comments as far as when will the livestock industry start liquidating, when will the ethanol plants shut down, what should government policy be, and that's one of the other reasons we invite you folks here from Country Hedging today. For example, in the fuel industry, which you guys are also involved in, when we took $10 crude and we went to first to 50, and we thought it was ridiculous, and then it went to 100, and then it went to 150. What are you guys in the grain trade and our consumers out there? What do you think is the top that this thing could go? Because actually, historically, when farmers were struggling and subsidies were big, $5 soybeans and $2 corn was the level, and yet the crude oil went 15 times $10.
Sure.
What do you think is the wildest thing this thing can do?
Well, I mean, right, the real question and the unknown is, at what price do we ration Chinese demand? And so far, we haven't really seen signs that that demand is being rationed yet. The market right now is focused totally on what supply is, and at some point, we will try and recognize whether we've rationed demand. I mean, I think I'd think that at $25 beans, you'd have people have to shut down, but
But
Things-
that's what I get with the futures market, people. That's what I'm trying to show you. Strange things are happening, and that's why I've been critical of Secretary Vilsack and our ag committees of not talking to these drought monitor people on a daily basis. We're maybe at a point in time when we're at a very serious crossroad on supply and demand, and to make sure that we're using it for things we really need. Joel, we want to thank you very much for coming out here. I hope I didn't pick on you too much, but hopefully encourage your people out there that you deal with CHS and Country Hedging and your local Cenex outlet, and see if they can do a little advertising with us at Inform TV. Thanks, Joel, for being here.
Thank you.